This is a Type toolmakers panel. Of course, having all of the toolmakers on stage at once would require a larger stage and much more organization, of which we have proven to be not capable of. But we did organize some things, and I asked these guys to send me a one-sentence introduction of themselves, which right now will come handy so I can speed up these introductions. So in their own words, we have Rainer Erich with an unpronounceable last name, works and writes stuff for the font editor Glyphs. Thank you for not making me pronounce your last name.
You're welcome.
Yes, really good. We have Frank Griesshammer. He's a typeface designer, font technician, educator, and toolmaker in the Adobe Type team. Lasse Pfister, Libre software developer, working on QA and developing next-generation type tools. Frederik Berlaen, Type Media alumni who has written the best font editor ever. I have to point out that ever is in all upper cases. Very good. And of course, Tom Phinney, FontLab CEO, previously Adobe and Extensys, loves type design and helping designers. We will try, I'm not sure if Asa is here, but she will be. Asa Lamedini will help me. And if you want to tweet questions or comments, you need to use the hashtag that you see at the very bottom there. This is the first time we tried that, and I'm not a very good Twitter user, so we'll see how that goes. So I will have them start by asking a very easy and hard question at the same time, what you guys have been up to.
So yeah, I'm working as a contractor for Google, and basically I was the last 2 years working on our quality assurance tool, and we're now kind of getting font bakery in the state where we want to share it with everybody, because we believe that it's a really good case for open source shared development, so everybody can do good quality assurance. So yeah, currently working on a web interface for it, but with good command line tool. So that's the most interesting thing for us.
I went on a holiday. It was super nice.
That's nice. Where did you go?
Holiday with my kids for the first time in a couple of years. So it was kind of a cool thing.
All right.
Google Font Trio came out last May something. This is continuous support for works that are still appearing in Google Font 3. A lot of support for open source project, because a lot of my time goes to supporting the community, building operations together with Cosimo, making it faster, making it more precise. I think also these things are really important, that you also give back something to the community.
Okay, so the Adobe Fdk is the font development kit Adobe provides for free for everyone. There has been version 2.8.1 released 4 days ago. The 2.8.0 version notably improves the FDK significantly. We have Python 3 support in the FDK now. We have UFO 3 support. The auto hinter will be replaced by a modernized PS auto hinter tool. We are trying to build CFF2 variable fonts with the FDK that are also hinted. So we are actively working on improving the quality of our font building tools and still making them available for everyone, both through education and online software support.
Okay, I'll keep it short. We have started development of Glyphs 3, the next major version.
Okay, can you still hear me? Yeah. Oh. Whoa. We have started development of the next major version of Glyphs. Sorry, the mic made me do it. It's a microphone. I can't go into details yet and can't show any screenshots yet, but suffice to say that we are generalizing the approach to type design in some ways that has traditionally been a little bit too Latin-centric in our opinion. So that's all.
Just take it off.
I had a much longer version of this, but which I'm now throwing away. So we've already in the workshops been previewing FontLab 6.1, and the main new things we're showing people are some small things like you can drag and drop and import Photoshop files, but also we have the new source panel so that you can view your current glyph as code and interactively edit it. So you make changes even while you're dragging a point around on the screen. The code is updating while you're moving the point. And similarly, you can make changes in the code and click compile, and then the glyph updates instantly. And also, we are actually very happy with elements in many respects, but at the same time, we have heard a few people saying elements are really powerful, but sometimes you just want to make a diacritic. So can you give us back components pretty please? And so we did. That's all.
That's good. No, now I sound like a girl. Yeah. I have a question. I have to say this is a bit selfish of me because this is my question. Then I will open the question for all of you. But what can be done to actually improve off-site collaboration in type design from the tools point of view? Off-site, so there's remote collaboration.
Well, there's something called the internet.
Yeah, that's good. But
Sorry. Well, I think a lot of people are already working together off-site, remote with UFO as a main format, sharing those files over Git, merging and committing their changes so other people just can continue working on that. I think this is a big thing, and I think every major company has its own kind of set of tools that they are proprietary made for themselves, which is maybe not a good thing, but that's how it goes. And I think, and maybe that's kind of the weird thing, because I'm also in this position there as a small company. I'm opening a lot of tools for everyone, where big companies are keeping their tools very closed in-house, which is maybe kind of an open call for everyone just to share more code and to be more open and about what kind of tools they're using and how they are using, and sharing kind of font data with each other and how they're working together with 50 designers, because this is like a real problem somehow. It's possible, but there are different kind of options with different kind of results.
For our part, we are doing a couple of main things. One, supporting UFO 3, and the other is with our new source view and what we call a VFJ format, that is a JSON representation of font, JavaScript object notation. And again, it's a plain text representation like UFO, and you can do things like, once you've finished editing that glyph, you can just copy and paste the text representation of that and send that across. And that includes everything, not just the glyph itself, but notes, hints, everything about that glyph cell, color coding, you name it.
Will that spectrum be open?
Well, all the file formats that Glyph supports are text-based. You can all the file formats Glyph support are open source, and you can have certain measures. You can take certain settings inside Glyphs to better to improve the Git workflow. For instance, you take out the last change date, which is not necessary in a Git workflow, and that makes it much more easy to handle it. And the other thing, we have a separate app, Commit Glyphs, it's called, for a specialized Git client just for glyphs files.
I think one thing I can think about in regards to the FDK is that there is also a Linux distribution of the FDK, a Linux version, which can be installed on a server, so people can build their fonts on a server, which I can imagine being important if you have a distributed font design system.
Yeah, for us, it's more like we work with a lot of designers, but we don't sorry, I can't hear me. Well, we don't work in the design process. We just take their ready fonts and then check them and see if we can onboard them. But we standardize a lot of the Git structure the directory structure they use, and we also kind of have this font bakery dashboard, which will be kind of a self-service thing, so that designers can self-check their projects and see if it's kind of passing, stuff like that. So that's just all for us to speed it up and to give faster feedback to the designers. I think we'll be there probably end of the year. So standardize your sources. That's maybe the best thing you can do. And then everybody knows what's happening in the project.
But that's also the problem. If you're standardizing a way of working, then you're forcing designers in a way of working, which is kind of, I think, not a good thing, because a lot of designers will forget to commit, and they are even forget to just save, which is kind of a stupid thing. But that's what's happening. They just want to design, and they're just making their kind of things, and they don't really think about the bigger kind of structure, which is maybe then behind the whole thing. So if you're forcing them in one single way of working, which is kind of a hard thing of standardizing a way of a workflow kind of thing. It happens in bigger companies, but it's when it gets smaller, designers are more freer in the way they work or they want to work.
Yeah, sure, but in a way we are trying to make this big collection of types, and in a way type families, and in a way we are a big company. In a way, I mean, we are not kind of a typical foundry, but we need to have our input to be in a good shape. That's the only way how we can handle this stuff. And actually, so how the designer works is not so much of a problem. The most important part is that we have kind of a Git repository that we can take over. So what happens before that is not so important for us. You can still have quite a lot of variation in how you work. We just ask you to put your files in the same place like everybody else.
Yeah, but that's why Google is in a different position than I think the rest of us. Maybe Adobe is in the same position as Google, because you just get like final results, UFOs or source files, when everything is finished. And I think also your question was what happens during a design process. How can your
development process, the design process, exactly.
Which is I think also it takes more time to develop a typeface than generate one. And I think that's also kind of an important kind of thing. If you then standardize this, it's really hard then for designers to fit into a specific kind of position.
I totally agree. So, but one thing is we all like Git, and it's really hard for designers to use it. And I'm a bit sorry about this, but that's really a good kind of working model of collaboration. So, but it's hard to kind of get. It's not so much you have to get into it, but you have to wrap your head around it and how it works. And then, I mean, basically, maybe we could kind of do a workshop next year, Git for designers. I'd glad to help with that.
Okay, I will now, the questions are open, so basically if you want to ask something, please raise your hand at any time. If not, I will keep with a small list that I have that I collected from the members mailing list and Twitter. Questions? Yes, Toshi.
Actually, we can hardly hear that microphone.
Okay, that's not a question. And can you hear this one?
Yes. So you should probably swap. I'm sorry to say, but I think your question, like your moderation, the answers for the people are kind of
Okay. Yes, I can. Can you hear me now? No. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. Actually, the AV people is asking me to use that mic, and you are asking me to use this one, so a bit torn apart. Okay. And you had a question as well.
Well, I posted an email actually.
Right.
Because now that we have variable fonts, it seems that every font editor should have the exact same interpolation engine. Do you agree?
So the question is, now that we have variable fonts, should all the tools have the same interpolation engine?
We're trying to decide who to pass the mic to. So, I think the short answer is yes, or at least we should get the same results. And the easiest way to guarantee that is by using the same engine. If everything is defined really well, perhaps we can get away without using literally the same engine.
Yeah, I think also there are kind of still some kind of interpretations when different axes are not touching or are going in different direction. I had like long chats with Erich from Oakland about this, and his mutator mat system is different than the Volib one, which is kind of very similar to what's happened inside a variation font, a variable font. So I think there are, what goes beyond, where does it stop? What's your neutral? Do you need a neutral? Now we decide that we wanted to have a neutral. In mutator and superpolator we didn't have a neutral. It was not necessary to have a neutral, which is kind of a free world where you just like masters in there, and then you can go from there. In a variable font, that's not a workable solution because you need one specific spot in space where this is my neutral, and then everything built from there, which is kind of a different interpretation from coming from the same model. So there are kind of different kind of, maybe the Volib should change again to whatever, I don't know. I think it's good that people are still thinking about this and proposing different kind of options while doing this design space, which is kind of a complex thing if you have, I don't know, 15 masters as maximum. And it's not the maximum, but it's the, but yeah, I think to settle with one kind of design space, I think it's a good idea to really have. I think most of us have the same kind of Volib kind of idea behind the generating instances as the mat behind, but they are still. But there is a difference between muted mat and Volib.
Yes,
okay.
using muted.
Yes, so it's, I think one, so there's been these discussions and maybe also at Typolabs, one particular, so the variable font model is intended for end users. So for example, the whole spec, OpenType spec and also Volib does not allow extrapolation, but extrapolation is very useful when you're designing. And also, so this is, I think it would be great in principle, but because the Volib model probably will stay, the engine will stay because it's now implemented in very, very many like client apps, end user apps. That will stay and that will not likely change. But the designers, of course, need sometimes more tricks, sometimes they have ideas, so I think the interpolation engines in the font making tools should be more flexible. It would be great if there would be some way of ensuring that there's one way that they preview the results, but I think it's tricky, and I think the fact that also Glyphs, I know that uses a different engine for, I believe, good reasons, and mutator math is also a bit different, more flexible for good reasons. And what's in the variable font spec is kind of like a lightweight or a limited solution that is good for the final fonts, but not necessarily for the design process.
Any other comments? Georg?
I was basically saying what you said. I was raising my hand, but I was Adam explained it in the same way I was trying to do. So I had the same idea.
Any other questions from the audience? No? Yes, Bianca.
I have a question actually. I would like to know from the developers of the font editors how you set your priorities. Like, how do you decide on what you work on first? Is that by like what's most exciting at the moment, or what's most needed? I hope it's needed.
Yes.
I don't know. I like the fun part first. I really do. I think that also comes because I'm not a programmer. I can program, I can write apps, I make apps. But I think in the first place I'm a designer, and I also think as a designer, and I also want to program as a designer. And I think this is kind of a big benefit of my tools, that they are both made from the designer point of view, and not, I have no interest. People are asking for Windows version or Linux versions, but I get a burnout without even thinking about developing this kind of stuff. So this is not a good thing. So I prefer the fun thing first than the needed things, because if you can make the needed things as fun things, I think you get like a nice combination. I think this is the good things. Fun things first.
Well, in our philosophy, there's the important stuff and there's the urgent stuff. And we're always working on the important stuff and working that off. But if urgent stuff comes in, that has to go first. Because there might be something that we have to ensure that that current workflows stay workable. And if there's something that doesn't quite work the way that's intended, then it's an urgent thing that has to be attended first. Luckily, we can spread it out across multiple developers. So.
I actually have a follow-up question on that. When you
No.
Sorry.
No follow-up questions. No.
Yeah, follow-up question. If you fix the urgent stuff, like how are you testing? I don't think this is on. Sorry, I just wanted to know if you are distributing urgent fixes, how is your testing process? How thorough are you with that? How does it look like in the background?
Now, there are some things where speed matters most, and those are marked as early betas, as cutting-edge versions. Sometimes we give out an extra warning that this has not been tested very much, but it fixes this and that problem. But generally, we have a set of unit tests that each build needs to pass, and the stable versions usually have a much broader testing.
Yeah, more or less what you said. I mean, we have some features that are marked as still experimental sometimes, when something is really new. We also we have a number of internal testers, and if there's a particularly problematic bug, sometimes we will also make the build available to the person who reported the bug. There's a variety of options just to make sure that we've solved something.
That's it. Any other questions? Okay, I have one then. Albert sent an email, and he pointed out that in interpolation processes, sometimes you end up with stems that are not the same width. And he said, how can we have intelligent interpolations? I am just repeating.
By drawing correctly? By not making drawing mistakes in the first place? Hey, of course it's just math, I know, but it's then 1/2 or something. Yes.
There could be moments in which you get a 1 unit difference.
I would like to point out that the 1 unit difference only matters to the type designer. It's not in the rasterization. It doesn't make a difference at all. The auto hinter will rasterize that one stem exactly the same way as the other stem. So this is a theoretical problem, I think.
Yeah, it's just the basic problem of math
that cannot be overcome
Okay.
easily. You could work with components or component-like structures that take out the problem or that shift the problem further back.
Right.
You
Right.
never have complete.
Right.
Rounding is rounding, and 0.6 rounds different than 0.4.
Okay.
Can I add something to the question?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. My suggestion was that you use...
No, wait.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, you're better explaining it.
Of course, I checked the drawings. Yeah. So it's not about this. It's not about faulty design. But you know what happens, and the idea is that you solve the problem by using hinting, because hinting takes care that stems of the same width rasterize on the same width or scale to the same width when you scale. So this is in fact the same as the same problem as with interpolation. It is. It is the one. I think I don't have to explain what happens, but you could use hinting to take care that the stems come out at scale, are being integrated at a given value.
So, but
for all
hinting
stems
is
that
used
are the same.
Just at a later, hinting is used just at a later point.
It is, but it's not it is not used when making instances in glyphs or pointers.
Yes, but the hinting ensures that your stems, even if they are 1 or 2 units off, are the same. So hinting is already used. I don't see a reason why it should be used in two
But it's
places.
used, it is not used in the program. It is not used helping me as a designer. That's the point. I understand hinting.
It's actually not only about stem widths, it's also about smooth connections on the curves. If you look,
Yes.
Myriad Pro, it has all the corners, all the sharp corners, yes. And well, we have this technology for a long time. We called it smart scaling, but it was never activated because nobody ever asked for it. We probably should just turn it on. And it uses hinting, of course.
I'm not getting this.
We use hints to correct rounding errors. We have that algorithm from long time, but it was never included into the app.
Okay,
Because
so
nobody,
that's why I didn't see it.
Yeah, nobody ever asked for it because it
I
just
asked.
works. Yeah, we
I'm not the
can.
only one who asked for this, so thank you.
Actually, that code is originally from Adobe, as I recall. No, the intelligence scaler, IS.
All I want to say is you say it is a design problem, but I don't think that's design. That's math. And I don't know if they overlap so much in that particular instance.
Nobody heard this? Okay. Albert, of course, is a very good type designer, and he tries to do everything perfect. And he refers to this problem as a design problem. But in my opinion, it's not a design problem at all. It's just math and design in this particular instance don't equate, don't overlap.
At some point, it's also a design question. The situation that Tuli mentioned, where you have kings, for example, in an S, you have a point in the middle in the stem, and you have two off-curve points, and you're going from a narrow version to extreme wide. It's not smooth, it's becoming a kinky kind of thing, where you have a broken curve, which is kind of a not a good situation in the case of, for example, variable ones, where you shift the thing where the thing in the middle becomes also important. I think that becomes again the design, because then you have to solve the design space by putting and designing your points in a better way, so you achieve the thing that you want to achieve also in the in-between space, because the in-between space also matters now. This is our exercise that I do with my students in different places, and I think these are kind of important because before we had static fonts, and you didn't see these kind of things because you were generating one instance and then you were correcting these kind of things, and then you were happy. But now the in between, which you didn't draw, is really important. And so maybe the one off is maybe
post-process your generated interpolated instances. Before you could kind of post-process them afterwards, and many people did, of course. And now it's like, you're right. You're getting, users are getting these rough interpolations, so to speak, not the polished ones that they used to get, maybe.
Yes.
I think one idea that's floating around, I think Underworld brought it up at Typo Labs Berlin and Typo Berlin as well. But other people I talked to were thinking about this as well, is that when you do interpolation, you usually, the easy thing is just to you have a line between like the old position of the point and like the other extreme position of the point. What would be interesting as a tool would be to have kind of a path the point can travel in time. So you would have a lot of kind of control. And it's basically very similar to what animation software does already. So the idea is not really new, but well, I don't use it in type yet, but that would be really interesting as a tool.
Questions? Anyone? Yes. Oh.
I think it's sort of a follow-up on this conversation, because I see a similar parallel in working as a designer and developer on the web, where when I'm working in a static application like Sketch, that's just a picture of a website. It's not the website. I can't actually see how the type's going to render, how it's really going to work until I get it in the browser. And I think the parallel here is just the distance between when you're doing your work and the steps you have to take to see the output. And if you have to build something, compile it, push it out there, and then see if it works, you're just sort of introducing a gap in a feedback loop, a gap in that loop that causes more issues. And I'm the first one to admit that you're never going to design a great website solely in Sketch. You're not going to know enough information. But I get that dilemma of wanting to have that feedback sooner in the process before you have to go and do that. I guess maybe that's the question. Is there value in bringing the hinting or whatever it is like earlier in the process, I guess? It's just what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, I think this is a problem for, you have good designers, you have novice designers, and then people who cannot imagine how something works. It used to be in print that people were giving notes to a printer, said it is in Helvetica, 12 points with 14-point leading. They had to imagine how the book looked like at the end. I think this is kind of important, as when you're a designer, you can also imagine the broad spectrum that you're designing in with. And if you have to, I think we are already very close in this previewing how it looks like, how it could be used. But I think that the benefit of being a good designer is that you can also extrapolate this idea that you're having in your static applications, even it's a font or a website, that you can also extrapolate this to a phone on different formats and to a tablet. And I think this is kind of still a necessary thing about being a designer and designing whatever that you're designing. So I don't know, I think you cannot close the gap between the real world and the part where you as a designer have things in your mind and trying to make a website in CSS and HTML or try to make a font in font editor. I think this is still something magically that has to happen in envisioning how it should work in print and on a website, if it's a font or not. So I think you never can close the gap between what you see, what you're designing, and what are you making for. So, or you have to calligraphy, maybe that's maybe the only one.
Oh, Rainer.
I think the main application of variable fonts is websites, right? So and you want to use it in a web browser, and it's the gap between designing it and getting the feedback from the web browser can be reduced to a couple of seconds. So I don't think that's that much of a problem anymore. So you can get your preview almost instantly.
Sorry, I want to go back to a point that Frederik was mentioning. You said you have designers with different levels of expertise, right?
Yeah.
Now, you have type makers, type designers with different levels of expertise. How do you deal with that with font editors? I mean, maybe the experts, they want to have more flexibility or more ability to go into the detail, and then the others, the more novice ones, they might want to have everything streamlined and just working automatically for them. How do you deal with those extremes, let's say?
Well, they are extremes. I think we have to tickle the novice designers so they become good designers, and they are very curious, like, what is happening? What is this? I also want to make this kind of thing. I also want to know how this works. And I think if you're missing that point as a designer, then you will never be a good designer. Period. I think it will not be fair to say that you can just sit back in your sofa and be a good designer.
It's a valid point. Tom?
I think that in many cases, different people need different things. And so in our case, for instance, with FontLab 6, we made a lot of very small incremental tweaky improvements to the pen tool to make the best possible pen tool so that people like Lucas de Groot, who will never use a simpler tool, will have the perfect pen that he likes, we hope. But at the same time, we did the Rapid tool, which I freaking love the Rapid tool, but Lucas wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole, and that's okay. The same app can have different things for different people, and that's a good thing.
I agree.
Okay, so I need to, yes, sorry, Georg, you.
So the question is a very basic, comes back to basic software design. So you need to design the software in a way that that people can understand it, and that it has, like the basic setting is easy to grasp for most people, and then you have the places to find some more detailed things in places where people, you need to, when you know that you need that stuff, then you find it. But if you don't know, because you are, and then I don't want to do like what they're saying, like, okay, you have good designers, bad designers. It's not about that. It's about people having, like, I don't want to judge people about their design skills. It's about technical levels. Some people just want to draw some letters and they don't want to bother with stuff. And then we have people that actually need to control things because they have certain requirements. And this is more the question. And so you need to be able to allow those things. And I don't care if I don't judge curves and I don't judge design quality. That's not the point. But it's more about technical experience and all the technical requirements.
Good. I have time for one more question. No one? Well, then I will do it. What do you think are the next challenges? What are you going to be working on in the next year, let's say? No one wants to disclose that. Okay.
I know I'm not supposed to use the word non-Latin anymore, but the moving away from the Latin centrism is something that for certain scripts can be quite a challenge.
Can I have a question on this?
Sorry?
So, if I work in any of your applications, when I hit new font, will I get a dialogue that instead of just giving me the stupid 4 alignment guides for the Latin script, will I get a dialogue that says, what script will you design? And if I click the Vanagari, it will give me a headline instead of a baseline and an X height.
You can have these things in glyphs now already, so you can
No,
say...
I want it when I hit new thing.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Any last comments, because I'm wrapping up.
What we want to work on is make a CFF2 a reality. We want to make the FDK much faster, more reliable, and I think we're on a very good way there. So we're just going to progress with our font building tools. And they work both for Latin and non-Latin.
They are very smart ideas for Font 4.
Excellent.
For me, it's basically the production pipeline stuff we have and helping people to use Font Bakery probably. And there's another research project, open source, what I'm working on, which is about figuring out how to make type, but that's really nerdy and probably 5 years from why you are interested in it, but I'm going to do that next thing.
I'll let Erich take this one.
So I think it would be non-Latin, variable fonts, and color, and the combination of those three.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry I have to finish this because we are running so late. Thank you, the panelists. Thank you.